here and in one sentence explain what each workshop is about so people can know a little bit more and decide where to go?
Hi, so I'm Cassie. I'm doing the QGIS 3. QGIS 3 is a new release, fairly recent. Basically, if you have never used QGIS before and you want to do some introductory stuff, that would be good for you. If you use the older version of QGIS, it'll also be good for you. And other than that, if you have been using QGIS 3, it might be a little intro level for you, but I hope you still get something out of it. I had looked up the workshop details before coming here. You probably saw that for this one it said, bring your laptop with QGIS 2.2.3 installed. It should have said above. I think there's one over. I think it was here and then. But it doesn't matter. 3.2.3 is fine. Anything above that is gold. As long as it's not QGIS 2.18 or something like that, right? So hopefully everyone's got access to a laptop. If not, that's fine. Just take some pictures and you'll have access to the box link that will show up in the next slide. You can use the tiny URL at the bottom, which has a convenient GIS Day UIC workshop, which is probably easier to put in your so go ahead and start on that. Download those. If you don't already have QGIS downloaded, actually let me just ask, does everyone have QGIS downloaded? No. Okay.
Are we going to need Wi-Fi or anything? Because
if you might need it to download QGIS.
So I have QGIS and say for data.
Then you're good.
Okay, good.
Except for just these files.
Okay.
But they're like 2 megabytes, so it's not a big deal. So if you don't have QGIS, just go ahead and download it while I'm talking. Just make sure it's like the 3.4 version is ideal. And the cool thing about QGIS is it's, on Windows, Linux, Mac, right? So you should be fine whichever version you download. There are some slight differences. In fact, I love QGIS because I usually main Linux because I kind of wear some different hats. Sometimes I'm doing system administration and coding and stuff. So I just use Linux at home for whatever reason. And QGIS is, most of the big updates are tested on Linux first, so it's pretty stable for me. I sometimes have little problems with Windows, but nothing big. Just some sometimes the program doesn't look as nice as it does in Linux because there. So before I proceed further, who here has used QGIS before? Okay, so like about 50%, which is good. I'm glad because this is definitely like a, if you've used ArcMap, we'll be using some of the similar tools to work with data, but you'll be learning how to do it in QGIS. So it's pretty, not basic, but kind of some intro stuff. Who here has used QGIS 3? Okay, so some people have used that. So, if you haven't been using it, you might not learn too much new here, today, because it's been out for a while. If you've been playing around with it, you probably used some of the new, tools that are available in QGIS 3 already. So while people download, I'll just talk about a couple different things that you might want to check out if you haven't heard of it already. Story map, like S3 story maps, it's getting bigger and bigger in the sense that, I work at DePaul, and I work at the LAS Liberal Arts and Social Sciences department, because that's where the Jack department is housed. And so, all the humanities people, they know story maps. They might not be comfortable opening up, ArcMap and working with rasters, but they know story maps because they've seen a cool one at some point. And for that reason, I was like, okay, is there an open source equivalent? Not just because I am a proponent of open source, which is a reason of itself sometimes, but also because I work with nonprofits a lot, and not everyone can afford a ArcGIS Online license, even at the nonprofit licensing. So I look into stuff like StoryMaps.js, which Northwestern does. I like that product a lot, and also QGIS Cloud, which is not exactly like story maps, but at least a step forward, hopefully a good step in one direction where you already have for some time been able to publish maps, like web maps using QGIS, using QGIS server. So QGIS Cloud is really a step in the right direction of offering some kind of cloud services. You do have to pay for them. but it's substantially cheaper than ArcGIS Online. And obviously it's not as slick as storyboards. Another thing that people ask me a lot about is, there's a lot of feature replacement for for QGIS coming from ArcMap. In that there's a lot of things you can do right out of the box without getting any plugins that you can do in ArcMap. But then there are some things like network analysis that are a little bit more tricky. There are network analysis tools in the way of the GRASS plugins, because there's the whole GRASS GIS, all those processing tools that are built in. But also there's PG routing, which is PostgreSQL routing, where you can work with routing services using PG routing in QGIS. And that can be a little complicated to set up, but I like to just mention it because some people are like, oh wow, I've been looking for something like this. And just, even though we're not exploring the workshop today, that maybe gets some people going sometimes, because that's maybe in the wheelhouse. And also, one of the big changes to QGIS 3, going from QGIS 2 to QGIS 3, is a shift from Python 2 to Python 3. If you, so when I was first learning Python, I was taught Python 2 because it was that long ago that it was not controversial at all to say don't even bother with Python 3. All the applications you'll want to use or write are Python 2. Don't even bother with it. And that's changing, has changed, is already here in the sense of now it's completely shifted. That it's Python 2. My understanding, both from my work and from talking with other people, just for legacy applications. But it's interesting because a lot of people, including myself, admittedly, are still sticking with ArcMap, but it's still in Python 2. Whereas ArcGIS Pro is in Python 3. So if you've been putting off looking into the differences and writing Python 3, I know there are a lot of college courses that still write that still focus on Python 3. You might want to look towards the future in that sense and looking at Python 3. And also because it's not just QGIS, it's also ArcGIS Pro. And lots of other applications that are and are not GIS related. The only one of the disadvantages is that it's not forwards compatible in the sense that if you write something in Python 3, it's not going to work in something running Python 2. So that breaks a lot of scripts, which have to be, the older scripts, like geoprocessing scripts, which have to be converted. I'm putting a screenshot here. There is on GitHub a really nifty tool for migrating plugins, because I assume some of you might be using QGIS plugins right now that were in Python 2, and this script might help. It might fix it automatically, but also it's not just Python. It's the PyQt, which is the GUI that QGIS uses for the tools that has to be updated too. So there is some manual stuff there. I was just naming off a couple things that may or may not be interest you. Well, hopefully everyone got QGIS installed while I was talking. Is anyone still working on it? Does anyone need any help or direction with installing QGIS? Okay, so it sounds like everyone's good with QGIS. So if you've got the box link, you can open up that Word document that has kind of step-by-step instructions with the big picture on each page. Hopefully no formatting issues there. But again, before I get into things, for me, I use QGIS not all the time, not 100% of the time. One, because my department still uses ArcMap a lot in terms of curriculum. And a lot of people want things on ArcMap, but they need help with ArcMap. So I have to keep up on ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. I do use QGIS at home because, as I mentioned before, I use Linux and Mac a lot. And it's a hassle to use ArcMap on a non-Windows system sometimes. Also, sometimes I work with nonprofits as a consideration in terms of handing off products and potentially training staff, if budget is an issue, I want to bring up QGIS if it's relevant. It's not always relevant because some organizations are perfectly fine paying a nominal fee for ArcMap, especially if they're not properly paid those rates. But that's something I think about. So, if you've ever used the older version of QGIS, this side over here was like just a bunch of icons, and you had to know what type of data set you were bringing in, like whether it was a shapefile or what, and click the relevant add vector button, which still exists by the way. We still have the add new shapefile layer and so on. We still have that functionality. But the cool thing about QGIS 3 is that it streamlines that a little bit, that you just click the data manager here. Now again, we still have these buttons down here where we can choose a specific type to add. But if I'm looking through documents, I'll just have this list and I can just drag and drop or double click or select a couple. So I'm just going to add the community areas and the census data. And these are both from the Chicago data portal, by the way. So basically, to join, I'm just going to go to Properties, and I'm going to go down to Joins, and I've got a cross here, and it works pretty much the same way it would in ArcMap, right? Now, I already know from looking at this data set what my join would be based on. I'm going to join it on the community area number, the target field of area num1. You notice these are strings. That's not exactly a best practice for joining. These are numbers, so ideally I want them integer, but I know it will work, so I'm just going to go ahead for now. One thing here is you'll want to make sure you select which fields you're bringing in by clicking the Join Fields box and then checking whatever's relevant to you. Another thing which can be really annoying if you don't catch it or understand why it's happening is when you do a join, it wants to prepend the layer's name to every single field it brings in. So if I don't check this and then delete it, this will be I'll do it really quick just to show you what it looks like, so not to ever let it happen. Even if I just leave this unchecked, actually no. If you check it and uncheck it, I think it disappears. No, it's still there. So click apply really quickly. Oops. So if you don't check that box and delete it, this is a feature I don't like. It just adds this mess in front of every field name, which makes it very annoying to actually find the fields you want to use. So I'll just delete that join and fix that. Not getting a great surface for my mouse, so I'm missing a lot. Just explaining why that's happening. So I'll check this and then delete it, and that will keep those fields from being duplicate. So I can double check my attribute table. Sure enough, I have these joined as I expected. While I'm here, though, something a lot of people at work don't know is that you can, in ArcMap, for instance, you can edit the table of contents, and if you change the headings here, that will change the headings in Legend. Some new people to ArcMap don't know that, and so their legends look really messy because they don't know to edit those, edit those items in layer list. It's pretty much the same way in QGIS, except instead of double clicking, you just right click and do rename, and I can just call something cleaner, and that will eventually show up in my legend once I have generated that. So there's a point of information. Now, I'm going to go back to the join. And I'm going to show off really quickly. What if I tried to join by community area name and community, which, again, I didn't show up the attribute table, but in the other data set, community is the community names. Again, not really best practices, but also if we go back and look at the attribute table, the example given for the one community area name, this is Beverly with, it's camel case, first letter is capitalized, the rest aren't. If we look at the census data, we will see this. It's breaking my example because in the write-up, I talked about how originally when I was running this earlier, maybe it's because I changed or something. The point being, the community area names, one of the data sets was fully capitalized, and so some steps in this show, by the way, here's how to use field calculator to create a new field where the one that's not capitalized is capitalized. That could still be relevant to you, so I will demonstrate it anyway. So to get to the field calculator, I open the attribute table and I think it's like a little abacus that lets me do either updates or create a new field. And it's pretty much the same workflow you would have in ArcMap, where you are creating a new field to fix a problem and populate it with the values. For instance, if you are converting from a string to an integer, which, earlier we were doing the join based on the numbers, but they were in a string format. We might have wanted to, say, take the community area number and create a new field, and then populate with the values from that and convert it to integer. Which, as you can see here with the output field type, you can do that similarly as you might in ArcMap.
Yeah. So is there any way to get like census data in as a percentage or anything without
As a percentage?
Like when I import, it always comes in as a text, and then it will read. I have to convert it to real to every variable. Is that something?
So you have an issue with importing and it always comes in as text?
Yeah, that's like, and I've seen it online, like on Stack Exchange, that like there's just go in and change it manually. How come it reads? If like I pull it from the CSV in Excel and I make it numeric.
You mean specifically in QGIS or specifically in whatever?
QGIS. Yeah, ArcMap. But I was just wondering if that's something you've seen or is that just me?
It is something I've seen, but actually, if you'll notice, by I think I clicked a button by mistake, which changed the way that it lays out.
To the bottom right.
Bottom right, thank you. Yeah, when I'm presenting, it'll first just, oh wait, where's the button, right? If we were to look at the, actually it's probably easier to see this by doing the join again. One of these is alphanumeric and the other one is integer. Or no, I didn't know, is that in the, yeah. I made that up. I think it just has to do with CSVs, because if you're, ArcMap has a lot of built-in support for Excel.
Okay.
And so if you're telling Excel, here's what this column format should be, ArcMap will often respect that, whereas CSV strip a lot of that information because it's just common to limit values, right?
So there's no magic fix that somebody...
Not off the top of my head.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah. That said, what I will be showing next. Sure, I'm doing this here. Probably want to skip forward a bit. I'm just going to reestablish that join one more time. Skipping forward to the field calculator where I'm doing the upper. Okay, so as you can see in this community area of Chicago, the community area is, it's not all uppercase. So therefore, if I wanted to convert it using the simple field calculator, then I would more or less use this, like the upper function with the commas that tells it that you're using a field name. So I'll show off here is there's a lot of tools now in GIS3 that will do autocomplete like so. This will actually work in this case because it's got spaces, so it'll only autocomplete the first word. That's good to know that exists. And that's more or less the syntax we're doing, creating new fields and populating the values. And notice here with the output field type, I can set them to be string, I can set them to be text. So another thing I'll focus on here is output field length. That defaults to 10. If you're doing something like names of community areas, obviously there are community areas that are longer than 10 characters, right? So if you aren't careful and set that default, it will truncate things, which is not great. How are people doing so far? Well, let's keep up. Okay, so next, I'm going to be adding another layer. I'm skipping ahead a bit to where I'm doing the add vector join for the CCA 2010 SF1 data set. First I'll add that. Just by double clicking. And I'll be using the CCA num. So to note here, this is DBF and it is respecting the integer, so
it's DBF.
And that makes sense because it's a database format. So
yeah, CSV is just the text.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I knew I was going to get around to an answer for you.
That's a great answer. I think it'll help you.
Also, you notice here they're mismatching types. Sometimes I see if it works. In this case, it will work. So, but again, it's best practice to be careful about. about the types you use. Okay, so now we're going to be testing out the processing tools. So I already have the processing tools open. Oh, actually, let me make sure that I actually applied that joint, because I think I might have exited before applying it, which is something I do a lot, and then also QGIS has crashed. By the way, as we go into the Thanksgiving, week and all that, DePaul runs on a quarter system, so I already taught my last class, and this is my last big thing until January, basically. So, now, QGIS did just crash, but in my opinion, it doesn't, I never had those problems using the Linux or Mac versions of QGIS. So I'm just going to blame Windows for that one. So you hit the processing toolbar at the top, and then click Toolbox, which is already open, this is how you get to it yourself. That will open up some processing tools. Before I exit out of the processing window, notice the graphical modeler that works pretty similarly to Model Builder in ArcMap, except of course it's based Python 3 now. If we go to Vector Table, we'll get to the Advanced Python Field Calculator. Of course, you do have autocomplete, and so you can get to it by searching at the top. Now, the example I'm going to do is pretty simple. It's just, simple division. But in the slides, I showed an example of something that's a bit more complex, and that's very hard to see. I apologize. Well, you can see that better. You can do a little mini script in the field calculator using, Python, and do some pretty complex selections, right? So, sometimes people ask me, like, hey, where's the select by feature? Or, select. If you look at this, you're able to do that kind of complex selection using criteria. Like, if it's greater than this or less than this, if it's this but not this, you're able to do those kind of power selections. It just takes a little bit of Python. And of course, there are some similar select by feature tools in QGIS besides this. And we just showed field calculator, but there's also some other selection tools. It's just they're not using Python, so I'm not as impressed by them, at least in terms of I had to learn all new syntax all the time with different tools. I like just knowing Python and being good. Now that said, I will keep it simple for this exercise. Essentially, we're going to be doing a population density, which I jumped to this without saying what the data set is. This is just some more community area stuff with like population density. It doesn't have population density, it's total population. And then we're accessing shape area from the community area Chicago data shapefile to kind of just do a simple population density redividing. Now, something to note here is, I'm just jumping forward that I'm saying, okay, I'll divide the shape area by the population, get the population density. You want to be sure before you jump into doing that the shape area that you're using is actually correct. It's not like degrees, or you're not mixing geographic projection systems projected. You can run into issues that way. And also, here I'm using the value equals P0005. So the shape area is coming from the community area Chicago data set. There's also some ways to, if you know this is incorrect, or like actually this shape area, that's not the correct value for this feature. You don't necessarily have to worry about like calculating the area. You can actually just access the geometry directly. In some similar ways you might if scripting an ArcMap. Like geom, where you're accessing that layer's geometry, and that can be a little bit more reliable. But by the way, so this is a new feature of QGIS 3, and I'm mentioning like also on Python 3. In this new release, a lot of stuff is either refactored, converted, or written from scratch. So it looks different, but a lot of tools do act different. So if you have been using the same workflow from the second version, you might want to look in the change logs and see, have there been any big changes to this tool between these major versions? Oh, I put in the global expression rather than the formula. That's what I did. So I was just jumping into doing the division, but obviously if I'm doing a field calculator on community area Chicago, and I don't actually have that joined and accessible, that might cause an issue. Yep. Sorry for the dead air there. Do you have any questions so far? Let's just double check and make sure that was actually joined. Good. Now this will work. Okay. Notice when I do that, it creates a new layer entirely. which has the convenience of letting me not worry about the fields being a virtual field, which when you do a join, that's stored in memory. So if I were to remove the CCA CSV, or sorry, DBF, then it would remove those features from community areas because that join was only in memory. Of course, if I were to remove the bottom two layers, then the calculated new shapefile would still have those features because it's no longer in memory, it's been saved. So, there are a lot of plugins you can grab. You can manage and install plugins. Of course, this only works if you have an active internet connection. And one that I still use is MMQGIS, which I'm just showing a special focus on, not because I'm going to use it, but just because I want to talk about some of the features and how some recent trends might be relevant to you. This is in the booklet, it's just MMQGIS. If you open that up and look at the geocode, you're able to geocode in QGIS. However, has anyone here heard the news of Google and the new pricing schemes? This has been hitting developers really hard. Basically, Google decided to raise the pricing on a lot of their geo services significantly. Like, in some cases, like small organizations of like 1,000 people, we're going from, paying like $100 in licensing to Google for geoprocessing to being told to continue using our products the way you are now, you'll have to be paying $10,000 a month. And that affected, I said, DePaul even really quickly, because DePaul, had a lot of web pages that were using Google Maps. Say like, here's campus directions and stuff like that. And as these changes hit overnight, we were rate limited super hard. So I'm in my office, I'm trying to just do Google directions to figure out how to get to like a show after work. And it wasn't working because the whole campus was rate limited. And so that was the thing, and that's affected a lot of people. And that's affected people using Google in a business sense. That also obviously affects QGIS when it comes to geocoding. Because the whole idea in the past was you would have a CSV file, and you'd say, I'll use Google Maps to geocode, and I'll call the Google geocoding service. And years ago, you would just run this with no problem. Not this plugin, was an earlier plugin. And then Google was like, okay, we'll actually want to make it so that we're not just letting anybody hit our servers 1,000 times a day for their business needs without us getting a cent. So you have to have an API key, which means that you have to make an account with Google to get it, right? And plug the API key in. Now that has been nerfed so badly that when students try it, they say, I only get 12 locations geocoded, and then I was told that was it. So that is a factor in terms of QGIS, because on one hand, you want to explore QGIS as a free option to ArcMap, which now also has geocoding completely paywall too. I'm sure some of you might have noticed, or maybe you weren't around in the older days when you could, if you had a copy of ArcMap, you could geocode. That was it. Now, at least in ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro, there has to be some named licensing involved. You have to have some ArcGIS Online sign in, unless you upload your own locator. Point being, if you are interested in geocoding QGIS, you will still want to use this tool. You will just want to use the OpenStreetMap option and avoid the Google Maps entirely. That's my advice. Similarly, you will still need an API key from OpenStreetMaps if you want to do that. We're not going to do any geocoding here now. I just wanted to show that really quickly. Now, one thing we can do is kind of do display XY coordinates like you might do in ArcMap. That's pretty simple by going to a delimited text. Let me back up a second. Say I have this farmer's market data set. It's down a little bit here. This farmer's market data set is a CSV. It's got lat and long, longitude in it. It's also got addresses, but because it's got lat and long, I can just, I can say, okay, here's XY, let's map that. If I just double click it from the data source manager, although it is a very cool tool, if I double click it from the data source manager, it won't map. It will be in the layer list, but I'll have to do more to it and work with it. However, if I go to the delimited text option and I grab the farmer's market and I go to geometry definition and I say point coordinates, it knows, oh, here's the X and here's the Y. And once I click OK and make sure the geometry is set to 4, that's fine. Add. Might be a little hard to see because the default symbology is not a great contrast, but the points have been mapped in my project pretty quickly. Just similarly as you might do in ArcMap. Just that's really simple. That's all, in case you didn't know. Now I'm going to show off one last geoprocessing tool that's new to QGIS 3. I'll be adding the hospitals shapefile. I'll also be, taking out the farmers markets. And I'm going to search multi, and then I'll autocomplete and give me multi-ring buffer. I set to 2 rings and set to miles, 1 mile distance between the rings, and run it. Buffers are not too special, right? We use buffers a lot. It's not too wow to use them, but in the past, doing any buffers at all, Reeves versus QGIS, was a plugin you had to know about and then install, and then it was made by a contributor who maybe has some bugs in the code and they stopped working on it 2 years ago, because that's the nature of the open source piece sometimes. Now, though, you notice we got up to it for the processing toolbox. That's built into QGIS 3. There are a lot of processing tools, and I'm going to go over every single one, that are now just part of QGIS 3, which means they're maintained by the core developers. Which means you can submit bug reports on them. That's a big and nice change. Now, QGIS 3 is open source, right? So when it comes to those bug fixes and major changes, those are like sprints at conferences where people get together and contribute a lot of code. It's not like Esri where they're, on paper having people working around the clock to do security updates and such. That said, it's to me a big major change worth noticing that a lot of processing tools have been cooked into the actual product, and furthermore, the actual tools for making tools have gotten a lot better in my opinion. I've played around with them a bit. I've been converting some scripts myself that were last updated by the contributor in 2013, and hope I can maybe take ownership of them. But now it's a little bit of point and click and a little bit streamlined in a good way for making your own processing tools, or at least writing scripts and making them look good. There's one thing to write a one-use script to convert a bunch of rashers the way you want, and it's another to be able to have combo boxes and drop-down menus. They're pretty simple to use using the QGIS tools. So I think now I just want to talk about labels, symbology, and the layout engine. Now, if I think that I no longer have the, yeah, I'll have to add the join again. Community areas with the original, I have to add that whole census in altogether. Just 1 second. We're running a little bit low on time though, actually. So I'll make this fast. That always trips me up because I don't think to like check that and delete it. Hey, that's the beauty of open source. You could fork QGIS and write your own version that doesn't have the feature if you wanted. Okay, so I'm going to remove the buffer and I'm going to remove the hospitals. By the way, if you think the buffer looks a little weird, you're right. That's because I'm moving pretty quickly and I'm not worrying too much about projections. But if you want those buffers to look good, double check your projections that they're not on the fly and that everything's matching in terms of attributes. Which, just to show you really quickly, if you want to mess with properties, so this is like look at the data frame in ArcMap. You can look at here's the point system for the project, and you can do the same by clicking the properties for the actual layers. Okay, so I've got 3 areas in Chicago. I'm right-clicking. Really quickly, I'm going to talk about one more thing I'm not going to actually demonstrate, which is a 3D view, which works a little bit like ArcScene, which is like, so what, because ArcScene's been around forever, but again, it's like, this is built into QGIS now. You can actually do some 3D rendering and looking at 3D imagery in QGIS, which is neat. You look at VR or something, so who knows? So to mess with the symbology of a layer in QGIS with the symbology tab, be a little hard to see. If you look at the very top, where you have this thing as a single symbol. I don't know why they put it all the way up there. We can click that and go to categorize, just as we would in, say, I'll set it to the hardship index, and I will classify. And I actually want to be. Thank you. I want to be classifying, we have to put the column back in again, of course. What do I use for, oh yeah, I use below property, which is actually percentage. I just added the hardship index, which I don't think is the right type, but the percentage was. So it's not going to let me actually add that unless I take the time to convert that field. Just to save time, although this write-up shows the percentage under the poverty level, I'll just use the population. Though it's not really meaningful, look at this one. So I will classify that. I can, like in ArcMap, do natural breaks, manual, etc. I can also, when I edit the symbology, I can do, this is nifty, and I wish ArcMap had this. This is one thing I really wish ArcMap had, was I can do, it's maybe a little hard to see, HTML notation. So, right away I can make sure that any colors I choose are web-safe colors. If I'm publishing online, that's a big thing. Also, I could go to Color Brewer. Everyone's heard of Color Brewer, I would assume. If not, it's a very cool site. But essentially, it lets you make standardized color schemes, and it will give you the hex values of those exact colors. So you're like, oh, there's a good classification scheme. I can just copy paste those hex values into QGIS, which is really convenient and nice, in my opinion. And then also, without messing with that too much, I can also go to labels. And I can do rule-based labeling, and that can get pretty complex. And I'm not going to get too much into that now. But you can use some special rules. You can say like nothing that touches each other, kind of like the MapLex engine and ArcMap, you can use that. Also, if I go to this wrench button here, this is the layout manager. I click create, and it's okay. This is all very, very new for QGIS 3. And in my opinion, it works way better than ArcMap's layout mode. Where we can add the map, and I click the add item, add map button, and I just drag it, kind of like if you were inserting a data frame in the layout of ArcMap. I can move that around, I can add the legend. Of course, since I wasn't paying too much attention to how I was designing the legend, once I add it, it's going to look a little bit messy. But also on the right here, what's important is that I have a lot of options. Oops. I have a lot of options for settings. I'm trying to remember where it is. I'm kind of blanking on it at the moment. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But the point I want to say without spending a lot of time searching for buttons is that in the layout manager, you have the opportunity to define all the items in your layout using just HTML. And that includes stuff like relative positioning and such. So although I drag and drop the map and the legend, I could have also, there's a pop-out where you can say, title, legend, etc., and format it according to HTML. So if you know HTML, that's really nice. And then of course, one very last thing I'll show is package layers. Now, one thing I really liked in ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro of recent has been the map package feature. That's something I really love because, especially people new to ArcMap, they don't understand. I saved the project and then I moved it to my flash drive. Where is everything? It's like, no, you have to remove all the layers. It's annoying, right? That's why I like using the map packages in ArcMap because it just packages everything together. The geo package is somewhat similar to that, but a little bit different. It's like a spatial light database. The idea is, you collect all your layers and you package them together into that single geo package, and that is pretty convenient. Now, it doesn't have the hooks to double-click in opening QGIS like Map Package does, but it is an open source format. It's really nice. If you are doing database work, you can plug that into other databases. It's pretty nice. So that's all I have time to demonstrate, but we have a couple minutes for questions if you have any pressing ones right now.